All right, g'day guys. Welcome back to Stat Chat Sports. You're here with Steve and Tazza for our review of Matchweek 16, the last weekend of Premier League action as we break for the World Cup. Tazza, it's going to be a slightly shorter one today, just due to the fact that there's no game of the week for this week. So we will start as always on the hit. This week we're looking at Brentford after a 2-1 win over City, 90 plus 8 minutes. City got the chocolates in a late winner the week before, but they couldn't grab it this time.
Yeah, this hit writes itself, really. I mean, it's hard not to go for Brentford. Looking really in everyone's focus was on the World Cup. I think a lot of guys just trying to get through these games and make sure that they're good for the internationals, and then a result like this pops up. It really changes the landscape. Oh, I wouldn't say it does change. I mean, it's a 2 point sort of a title race to a 5 point, and it means Arsenal are definitely going to be top at Christmas. So it's pretty wild. Yeah, but Brentford were great value for this. I mean, for the win. You look at the stats. Yeah, City dominated 75% possession to 25. It's a domination in terms of control, but Brentford had plenty of chances, and they were great value. Even before they buried the first one, they had two good ones, and I think Tony he didn't have a free net, but I think he was pretty much on the spot, on the penalty spot, where he had a shot and he put it straight at Edison. So that was a bit tame, but I mean they were very good value for the win.
Yeah, I mean you're never gonna have a lot of possession against City unless you're someone who like Liverpool or Arsenal or something like that who can contend with them. But a side like Brentford, you're never going to have a lot of possession against them. So that part they would have expected. But yeah, 10 shots, 8 on target, for Brentford.
Brentford,
and only keeping City to 6 shots on target, considering they had 29.
29
shots.
Huge.
is a pretty good defensive effort. And then right at the end as well, they had the energy. Was it Wissa, I think, that beat Kevin De Bruyne on the edge of the box from a City corner to start the counter attack. It kind of looked like that the move might have been spurred a little bit after Wissa made that pass across field to I think it was De Silva, who eventually set up Tony.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, I mean that's perfect for Brentford. I mean they've hit a couple of I was going to say a couple of wins, but that's actually their first win in 5. But they've managed to pick up a couple of points here within that last 5, and everyone would have looked at that result and seen that was just about a shore up for City. So obviously Brentford will be happy to take the points, and another 2 goals for Ivan Toney, who look, we'll probably get to him a little bit later, but he just further proves that he is just a stonewall to play every game for Brentford, and he's a large part of the reason why they have the success in the Premier League that they're having at the moment.
Yeah, I really cannot see him at Brentford past this season. He won't leave in the winter window. Brentford, just unless they get thrown some silly money, he's not going anywhere. But I think he needs to be testing himself in a different caliber, in a different team. So I think we'll see that eventually. But I mean, he is Brentford at the moment. Don't take anything away from the other 10 guys on the pitch, but I mean, there's a good case to be made that if Tony wasn't there, Brentford would be just about rock bottom.
I think is it who is it? Where is he? Yeah, Brian Mbeumo. I mean, he's been just as key for me. He's I don't have his stats in front of me. I don't know exactly how many goals he's scored currently. Where are we here? Only the 3 this year, but that's still, he's only one behind what he finished on last year. And in a couple of games where Tony has been unavailable in the squad, he's stepped up with a couple of goals. So yeah, you're right. It's not just down to Tony, but 10 goals in 14 games in the Premier League so far for him. It's a big reason as to part of their success. The Miss. I don't think we've spoken about them for a while. we had, well, wouldn't say necessarily say we, but I would have thought that many people would have had higher expectations for this team at the start of the season. No one expected them to be where they were last season, but at the moment it seems to be a repeat of last year. We're talking about Everton. The 3-0 defeat to Bournemouth, currently sitting one spot above relegation zone by a singular point. Something's just not quite right there at the minute.
Yeah, they're really proving that last season wasn't the outlier. It's quite shocking. Yeah, absolutely. They deserve to be down there, and quite that's their place by all examples that they've shown. They're throwing up nothing, and some of the defending against Bournemouth was downright awful. I mean, I think the second goal or the third goal, they basically had four hits at it. It was that there was the one hit. I can't remember who kept it in, right on the touchline. Basically, fired across goal. Pickford parried it out, and then the third was basically it was lobbed back in, and I think it was it Moore with the header right on the line. I mean, you shouldn't be allowed that many bites of the cherry, no pun intended. But it's you got to do better than that. A team, I mean, Pickford is a good keeper, and I mean, I don't think he's world class, but he's being made to look a little bit stupid with this team, with the defending in front of him. Yeah, it's quite sad.
Yeah, I think you make a good point there. Like, he's a good keeper, but at the moment with the defense that's in front of him, he's almost being made to look quite silly. But we're going away from Everton here a little bit. But Nick Pope, when he played for Burnley, I think he faced like the most shots, or he had the most saves, or something like that. It might have been last season, and obviously he had a poor defense in front of him, but he was making the saves. Whereas at the moment, Pickford's not really doing that, and quite similarly to Brentford, the stats as well, suggest 65-35 split. Everton in possession, which again, you even in the state that they're in, you would expect them to probably have more possession here, but just 3 shots on target, and Bournemouth 16 shots, 9 on target. They had basically the same amount of shots on goal, rather, but a whole 6 more shots on target. I mean, Everton's forward line, obviously there's an issue there. I mean, Calvert-Lewin is out. He's obviously a huge key figure for them. Neil Maupay hasn't even hit anywhere near the strides that he, would have intended to at Everton since joining. But apart from that, I wouldn't necessarily say Everton are missing any sort of other key figures in their side. Calvert-Lewin adds goals. Richarlison, who had goals last year, is gone now. So at the moment, that they're quite evidently struggling for goals.
Yeah, the more you look at this team, and the more you realise why it is that far down. I mean, I look at this team, and you think to Everton teams of the last, probably go back 5 years. There was a smattering of class throughout. It wasn't full of class, but there was class around it. This team is pretty average. It's a bang average team. It's full of guys who belong in the mid-table, unfortunately, and I mean, this team definitely isn't the greater than the sum of its parts. It's even worse. So it's frustrating. And I don't want to get too sidetracked on Pickford, but is he England's number 1 for the World Cup?
He's been England's number 1 for some time now, and I think he will be England's number 1. I'm sure there's a lot of English fans out there that would probably like to see Nick Pope have a go, given obviously where he is at the moment with Newcastle. But I suggest the way that Gareth Southgate picks his teams, Pickford will be number 1 for the entire tournament, I would suggest.
Yeah, I feel like his form for England has probably been a little bit different than his form for Everton, and you can put that down to the team around him too. 100%. But yeah, guys like Ramsdale, who's obviously, I mean, Arsenal are leading the league by a canter. Pope as well. You'd have to think that they'd be feeling a little hard done by. I mean, they're putting their best foot forward. And like I said, it's not completely Pickford's fault that Everton are here, but they'd be a little bit aggrieved that they're not probably getting a look in at the number one spot.
I mean, let's have a look at their side just quickly. Obviously, Jordan Pickford, Connor Cody, both in the England side. Apart from that, I haven't seen. I would imagine Idrissa Gana Gueye is part of Senegal.
Mm-hmm.
And Nigeria aren't in the World Cup, so no Alex Iwobi. Apart from that, I don't see anybody else here looking at their squad, at least from the weekend, who is off to the World Cup. So at a worst case, 3 missing players for the World Cup. Obviously, everyone gets a month off, but they'll get a solid month with the vast majority of their side to try iron out any kinks in the chain. I mean, it can be seen as a good thing, the month's break, but obviously it could also be seen as a bad thing. I think for Everton, it can definitely be seen as a good thing because it's not like they're currently on some form that they are at risk of losing with a month's break. They'll use the month break to, with a shitload of training, I'd imagine, to try and come back in the new year fresh, and start picking up some points because. I mean, who have they got? They got Wolves when they come back. When the league restarts again, Wolves currently sitting dead last.
That's a 6-pointer.
That's a big 6-pointer. They lose that. Obviously, not only does it bring Wolves within a point of them, but I mean, given results elsewhere, it could see them in the relegation zone. And we saw their struggles last year when they were in and around this area. They want to be moving away from here as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I think they need to use this break to just hit refresh and go again. Start up come the new year and hopefully better turn of form. Matchweek 16 Star and Dunce of the week. We're going to go to a guy we have already spoken about him in this video. A guy we've also spoken about as the star before, and rightly so. I mean, he's absolutely killing it. 2 goals and a huge fixture this week. We're looking at Ivan Toney. The man cannot be stopped. He was our first ever star of the week when we brought in this segment. Hat-trick against Leeds, if I'm correct. And with 2 goals against City, there were 6 guys to pick from. There were 6 braces in the Premier League this week. I mean, we like to look at defenders as well, but I love to look at goal scorers probably a little bit more. 6 braces, but there were none more important than this. It completely changed the landscape for Brentford heading into the World Cup, and really changed the landscape of the top of the Premier League too. Obviously, City dropping points, Arsenal taking theirs, opening that gap right up at the top. But I mean, Tony's been a revelation all season.
Yeah, Tony's been phenomenal. I mean, 10 goals in 14. He's currently sitting 3rd in the Golden Boot race, amongst obviously Harry Kane, Erling Haaland. He's up there with big names. He's getting that done at the top of the park, where it's obviously this is his job, and this is a big reason why obviously Brentford are where they are. I mean, just you look at the goals just quickly that he scored. He scored 1 on opening day against Leicester. He doesn't score this goal, they lose the game 2-1. He scored 1 against Fulham. They lost that game anyway. It doesn't matter. 3, obviously a hat trick against Leeds. Take away those 3 goals, that's a draw rather than a win. Scored the solitary 1 against Newcastle. They got drummed. Scored the 2 against Brighton. Without those, it'd be a draw. And then obviously he scored the brace at City. Without them, they'd have lost. So, his goals have been with high importance for the results of at Brentford. So my main question really with this guy, and now Tazza, we're Australians, we're not English fans. We don't follow England internationally, but how does this guy not make the national team to go to the World Cup here? Like, obviously the finalized squad, 26-man squad, it's more than we've ever seen in the World Cup, typically 23. you would think there with those extra 3 picks that there's a higher chance for less capped players to make the squad. That England's forward or attacking players, they're stacked as it is already. Callum Wilson got in, which it's not that I wouldn't disagree. He's obviously he's having a good season with Newcastle, but I personally I would think Ivan Toney over Callum Wilson.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you there. I think, Newcastle have been great, but has Callum Wilson been as important to Newcastle as Ivan Toney has been to Brentford? That's not even a conversation. That Toney is an absolute linchpin of Brentford. I mean, you can't even make. I was almost going to make the argument that he hasn't been tested against, or maybe I don't know if he's the man in that team at Brentford. If he walks into a team where he's not exactly the man, is that a different way for him to play, and will he be able to adjust to a game plan where he isn't the main guy? We don't know, because every time he steps out in the park for Brentford, he is the guy. Whereas Callum Wilson probably isn't central to Newcastle's plans, and I mean he's not on the periphery either, but he isn't their man, because Newcastle are a better team. They're not as top heavy. Well, not want to say top heavy. There isn't one guy trying to do everything for the team. So you can look at it that way, but I mean, based on stats, it's hard to leave him out. I mean, even obviously Rashford hasn't had a huge year for United, but he was always going to go. I mean, if he's fit, he's been playing for England for a little while now. Sterling's been. I mean, Chelsea haven't been great, but I mean, I'd almost take Toney over Sterling.
You could definitely make an argument for that. I'd say, I mean, Gareth Southgate has always said that he picks his teams based off of form. Now the 26 that he selected screams that is a complete bullshit story anyway. There's players in there, Conor Gallagher, Harry Maguire hasn't played much Premier League action all season. Callum Wilson. I mean, Callum Wilson only has 4 caps for England, whereas Ivan Toney hasn't. He's not got a single one. He was on the bench in one of their UEFA Nations League games against Germany, but he didn't come on. So still no caps. Does that play a part for Southgate? Yeah, potentially. You go into the biggest tournament in the world. Taking a player that is yet to have a single cap for the country. I can understand that, I suppose. But I mean, you take on the same hand, you're taking Callum Wilson, only four caps, got a goal. But he's look at their stats. What's he got? 11 games, 6 goals. Still got 6 goals in the Premier League this year, Callum Wilson. But there's definitely, I can understand his frustration in being missed out, and then obviously, both his goal celebrations at the weekend, would suggest that, and the tweet after the game, I think he said, "If I speak, I'm in trouble." It would suggest him that he's not overly impressed, and rightly so.
He'd be thinking, I mean, what more does he have to do? I think he's putting his best foot forward in a team that isn't exactly going to bang goals in.
Yeah.
We alluded to the fact that he is third in the goal scoring in the Premier League. With a team like Brentford, who don't possess the Kevin De Bruyne's of the world, it's a pretty damn good effort. So how is he expected to do any more to get in the team? And from that point of view, I find it extremely hard to see how he missed out.
And there was a point brought up too on the Sky Sports podcast with Gary Neville, Jamie Carragher, and Jamie Redknapp, where they went through their England squads and picked their starting 11 and stuff like this. And Toney was brought up in discussion. The facts, penalties. I think he scored like 20 out of 20 penalties for Brentford, something around there. He's not missed a penalty for Brentford anyway. England traditionally, especially in the knockout stages, have the tendency to go to penalty shootouts. Even if you bring him in the squad purely for that moment right there, not only do England tend to go to shootouts, they don't often win them. Bringing a player who has a very, very good track record of penalties would have certainly helped.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if he gets the move, if he gets a move elsewhere next season, that's his one chance to prove himself. I mean, there's not much more he can do that's secure himself a move, play well at a big club. I mean, if he continues this form, he'd be a shoo-in. You'd have to think.
Yeah. I mean, he's 26. Next World Cup he'll be 30. So you'd think if he doesn't make
he's
it,
basically in his prime.
Yeah, and he doesn't make a World Cup next in 4 years' time, then he might not end up, ever getting to represent England in a World Cup. So yeah, this would have been the time to take him. I think obviously, in 4 years' time, playing at a different club, he could be at a whole nother level. So we'll have to see there. But based off of this week at least, with his performance against City, definitely deserved Star of the Week.
All right, Dunce of the Week. So I'm not huge on repeating. I mean, we had to look at Ivan Toney for the Star of the Week, but we have to repeat again. So there's been a bit of a bombshell interview that we've seen. One of the world's greatest players, Cristiano Ronaldo, looking at again. He's had an interview with Piers Morgan, and he has gone to town on Manchester United. One, why go to town on the club that you currently have a contract with, a club that helped make you what you've become? I mean, they're not fully responsible. He put it in the work, and he's widely regarded as one of the hardest working players on the planet, if not the hardest working. But the things that Manchester United have done for Ronaldo, he just seems to have thrown it right back in his face, in their face. Sorry, with some of the comments, some just basically from the top down. Look, throwing shade at the club, throwing shade at club legends, throwing shade at former managers. It's pretty rough.
Yeah, I mean, this screams that it's been bottling up for a long, long time. Now, there's no secret that at the start of the season he was clearly unhappy and wanted to make the move, and he didn't get that. And so far throughout the season, it's not gone his way. What is he, 38? I think he is at the moment, or around there, 37, 38. He's not playing every game. He feels like he should be able to still play every game at the top level. That's the way he obviously feels in terms of his body and stuff like that. His new manager, Erik ten Hag, sees differently, either based on form or the way he plans to fit or tries to fit Ronaldo into the system. Whichever the reason behind it being, Ronaldo is not playing every single game currently, which he obviously thinks he should be. And he feels he's being disrespected directly by Erik ten Hag, and that's he says here, he has no respect for Ten Hag because he shows him no respect, which I think is maybe a bit of a bold claim. I mean, we don't know obviously the backstories, but if he's claiming disrespect on the fact that he's just not playing him, I think you've got to, you've got to maybe think that that's probably the wrong thing to say. And I just, it's definitely, it's tarnishing his legacy, not only as a Manchester United legend. If, I'm sure United fans see him as that. It's not only tarnishing that, if not, it's already tarnished. It's tarnishing his legacy as a player in general. Like, you've got one of the greatest players of all time, who coming towards the back end of his career, his is talking shit about the club that he's currently at, and not only that, the club that gave him the opportunity to become what he is. He's like you said, he's done it from the top up, coming from the owners down to the management, into the players as well. He's said it as well. I'm looking at a couple of quotes here. He said, there's players in the changing room. He's like, people need to listen to the truth, because nobody has sort of come out and sort of said, everyone seems to be piss farting around with the truth a little bit here in his terms anyway. So yeah, it definitely came out of the blue, that's for sure. And it's going to make for an interesting time after the World Cup when he returns. Obviously, I think it's fair to say that his playing days are completely done at United now. He'll make the move in January. And, speaking, I know a lot of United fans. And obviously every single United fan is a Cristiano Ronaldo fan, but I'd say probably 95% of them are a United fan first. And none of them condone anything that he has said here.
No, it's really unraveling for him, and it's quite sad. And the one thing I just detest about some players is when they think they're bigger than the club. You just can't do that. And I mean, that's the problem when you take on these kind of players. They're such an enigma, especially. I don't think the world. The only other one I can think of is Zlatan Ibrahimovic. They're just their own. They're an enigma. They're
in their own world, just about.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's their world. It's no one else's world but their own. And yeah, and like you said, he probably will move on at the end of the year, in the winter or summer. Next transfer window, he's probably gone. But the more he does this, the more he reduces the potential suitors.
Yeah,
who wants this character in their team? I mean, I love that Ten Hag's hasn't succumbed to the pressure that many managers have done in the past. He isn't bigger than the team, and he's told him that. He's straight to his face. It's not a lack of respect. It's moving on from a guy who's closer to 40 than 35. Is he 37, 38? Closer to 30. So
he's
closer
in
to
the
40
middle.
than 30. Yeah. Well, there you go. I mean, he's on the wrong side of 30. Put it that way. Wrong side of 35. It's just they need to move in a different direction. And Ten Hag has pulled the pin on Ronaldo and said, "Look, you're not." I've said this before. That he's just not in their best or their next Premier League winning squad. And it takes a strong manager to do that, to be able to manage an ego like that, and they're going to reap the rewards from it. But yeah, it's a pretty awful ending to what was expected to be a good homecoming for Ronaldo.
Yeah, I mean, he even went as far as calling out ex-teammates like Wayne Rooney and Gary Neville, the two notable ones that he mentioned in his in the interview. I mean, like I said, we're not United fans. I don't follow everything that gets said about their club and their players and stuff like that. But clearly, Rooney's been talking some shit over in the States, because he went to town on him personally as well. Basically, calling it. What has he said here? That he's not saying I'm better looking than him, which is true.
So you did.
Yeah, so you did. But that was getting beyond football. That was going personal. So yeah, not a great look for Ronaldo. And as you said, it just doesn't help him, with potential buyers in the future if he wants to continue playing. It'd almost be easier for him at this stage to retire after the World Cup altogether from football, because even in the summer, I was speaking to Ralph, who we've had on the podcast before, Man United supporter. He said that there was United were quite literally willing to offload him to potential buyers in the winter for us, but even willing to, because Ronaldo wasn't willing to lower his wages. Apparently United were willing to pay half of his wages. but nobody out there wanted him, basically.
Mm.
And that was going back almost, no, not quite 6 months, but that was going back, 2 or 3 months ago now, before all of this happened, before he walked off, before he, had came out with this interview. And this has only further tarnished the, what, what he's about. So it's going to be very, very difficult, I think, for him.
Yeah, it's just dropping his value. It's dropping his value to United. It's doing absolutely nothing positive for him. So I don't know what the end game is here for him, because no one wins.
Alrighty, Tazza, because the lack of shortage of obviously Premier League this weekend, we'll move in the unpopular opinions to this video. Obviously, it's normally part of the preview for the following week, but bringing it forward, and due to the World Cup this week, beginning this weekend, I think why not a good opportunity to think of some World Cup editions of an unpopular opinions. So we've got a couple of our own, of course. I'll kick it off. I'll kick it off here first. I believe, and I've seen this being said before, but I feel like we could potentially see our shortest, or our least amount of penalty shootouts in a World Cup here in Qatar. Now I must admit, I haven't got the official, stats in front of me in terms of the lowest amount of penalty shootouts in a World Cup before. We had 4 last World Cup in Russia, 2 in the round of 16, and 3 in the round of 16 and 1 in the quarters. But I feel like, and coming from me, I hate talking about conditions, but obviously being in Qatar, it almost can't be ignored due to the weather, of course, and the substantial heat and the humidity over there. Teams are almost not going to last 120 minutes. Yeah, 120 minutes plus a shootout. That's going to be very demanding on them. And I almost feel like any team that does potentially go that distance will definitely struggle in the following game. So, not saying that if the game's tied, you're going to see anyone. Nobody's throwing a game here just to avoid going to extra time. But you may see almost a further roll of the dice to potentially grab that late winner within the 90 to avoid going to that extra time. Obviously extra time and penalties don't come into play until the round of 16 and further. So, like I said before, there's not a lot of break between, these final rounds. So, if you go the distance, there's a lot of recovery to be had before your next game.
Yeah. No, there's a good chance of that, and obviously with extra fatigue means there's probably a more chance of just a pivotal lapse of concentration that lets in a goal. I mean, it's not going to take a moment of sheer brilliance to get the goal. It might just be an error that was brought on by extra fatigue. And sort of looking at your point, are we going to see the worst World Cup in terms of skill as a result? Is it going to be an underwhelming World Cup? Not only from what we've spoken off the pitch, but is it also going to be underwhelming on the pitch, given the conditions are not favourable to most of these teams?
That's a good point. Yeah,
throw one back at you.
Yeah, no. Yeah, no, it's a good point. I mean, we spoke about it in our World Cup videos, which if you haven't checked them out yet, our World Cup predictions, that they're up on the channel, check those out. But we've spoken about, how obviously we think the teams will go. We all came to the agreement that, South American sides, and even potentially some of these African nations will probably fare best in at this World Cup because of the fact that the climate is it's as close as it's going to get to, Qatar without obviously being Qatar. Whereas these the European sides, which especially this time of the year are, rolling into winter, they're completely switching, and they're going to a complete opposite climate than what they're used to. So, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see maybe a lack of goals because come 60 minutes, the starting 11 is just absolutely fried. Yeah, it could definitely happen, and at a World Cup biggest stage, that's obviously something that you don't want.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many correlations you could probably pick with what we're saying here. Like, are we going to see the least amount of goals ever scored in a World Cup? Are we going to just see teams towards the end? I mean, could the knockout round just be an absolute ball fest because the teams are screwed after the group stage?
Mm.
It's such a weird dynamic that Qatar throws up. One that we really, I mean, we haven't seen before. We definitely haven't seen before in terms of conditions. We don't want to put everything on conditions, but it's so unique to an event like this. So we have to. But I mean, going back to the point, yeah, I think it is interesting. It's going to be, yeah. I think, yeah. You're probably right. All right. So my unpopular opinion, it's probably a little bit controversial, and there's definitely flaws with it. Like it sounds great in principle, and I'm gonna I've found this one. Oh, I'm not gonna lie, I found it on Twitter, and I just want to maybe change it up a little bit, but. We have seen, obviously, we've talked about Qatar and it being such a random venue to hold a World Cup, and for certain reasons they've been awarded it that we don't know and we probably never will know. I mean, Sepp Blatter's come out and said that he regrets ever awarding Qatar the World Cup and that it was the wrong choice. But to stop this in the future, I think, and it adds an incentive to competing teams. The World Cup should only ever be hosted by a team. It's where you do the cutoff, I don't know, but I'm going to say the top 30 teams in the world should only ever be hosted by a team that's in the top 30. And I mean that can cut out some wild ones. I mean Russia for one at 33, bang, gone.
Yeah,
I mean Australia don't make that cut, bang, gone.
Australia we're in the running for this World Cup.
Yeah, exactly. So it cuts, but it just removes the possibility of teams that don't invest in football in terms of the culture and with the skill, and it keeps the history of football, like the team. I mean, you look at the top 10; it's just steeped in football history and football royalty. And I think that obviously adds to the entertainment and the spectacle when you host a tournament like this in a country like that. I mean, Brazil, Belgium, Argentina, France, England, Italy, Spain, Netherlands, Portugal, Denmark. Top 10 all have great football histories. I mean, you look at Denmark, I mean, maybe not to the tier that the other 9 do. Still, I wouldn't be mad if it was held in Denmark at all.
I can see what you're saying. I feel like for me, it would almost be, instead of it being sort of limited to like top 30 nations, you would, if you as a nation have not played in a World Cup before, you eliminate yourself immediately. Obviously, this is Qatar's first World Cup, unless I'm wrong. I don't think I'm almost 99% sure that I'm correct in saying that Qatar have never been to a World Cup before. They're now in it, obviously, because they're the host nation. Host nation, it gets automatic qualification. They're gonna get rolled. I mean, it's obvious. We've spoken off camera before. We don't even think they'll score a goal. That takes one, that right there. Qatar being in it takes away the spot of Italy, for example. Italy, European champions, not in the World Cup. Italy had to go through
Yeah. Number 6 in the world.
number 6, rated national team in the world. They had to go through qualifications like everybody else, apart from Qatar. Same with Russia.
Yeah.
Like you said, Russia, if it was to this 30, top 30, Russia would have been out. Russia have been in just about every World Cup for the last, however many World Cups anyway. So they'd be involved. Australia, likewise, they've been there, since 06. They've been there consistently since 06. So they would qualify. But, to stop it happening again in a place like Qatar, South Africa, I don't know if South Africa had played in a World Cup prior to them hosting. I'm going to go ahead and suggest that they hadn't.
I couldn't tell you, but I'd say that'd be right.
Yeah, same sort of story there. I mean, South Africa are more of a footballing nation than Qatar. They at least got some results in their World Cup, but obviously didn't progress. But same thing. I just feel like when you sort of spread it around, and I understand what FIFA for the most part try to do when it's not corrupt is they try to spread it around. Football is the world game, so they want the world to be involved. But I feel like it takes out take out Qatar and put in Italy, and how much more interesting could that potentially be, especially in Group A. So I'm my throwback to your unpopular opinion would be to unless you've previously qualified for a World Cup, your name doesn't go into the hat to host a World Cup.
I love that, actually. I love that suggestion. I reckon I mean, if it's a cutoff, if it's you haven't made one of the last 3, 4, 5, whatever, and yeah, absolutely, it means teams that have had that pedigree before, that may be on the way back, they're eligible. But yeah, it stops those that haven't had or do have any sort of investment or some cultural, or I mean not financial investment, but cultural investment in football, gaining what is it's a huge privilege to host an event like this. It's the most watched sporting event in the world, without a doubt. So I mean, for Qatar to not really have played any role in any World Cup or any sort of major footballing event, or just in its history, in world football history, it stinks, to be honest. And obviously, I mean, that for reasons that we don't fully know or don't fully grasp, they were awarded. And yeah, I think that's a perfect resolution to prevent something like this from happening again.
Just to further go on, what I said before, but I mean, obviously the host nation is just one nation. Everybody else obviously qualifies, but like we're talking Italy, Sweden, Scotland, Ukraine, Nigeria, Algeria, Egypt, Colombia, Chile, Peru, New Zealand. Some heavy hitters in there. Obviously, we've spoken about Italy, but Nigeria. Nigeria, one of the powerhouses of African football. Algeria, AFCON winners in 2019. Failed to qualify for back-to-back World Cups. Egypt, lost AFCON final to Senegal in a couple of years ago, whenever it was, last year even, I think it was. Colombia. There's plenty of big countries and big names here that have missed out. Rightly so, they've missed out through qualifications. That is what it is. But like I said, you've one of these sides has missed out because of a host nation getting obviously the nod over them, and in this case it's a host nation that we are likely to see put up absolutely nothing in the way of entertainment for the World Cup.
Yeah, well, when I originally made the call about where I was kind of going to try and stop it, where was the cutoff? I was thinking, yeah, top 50, that would be okay. Guess who's at 50?
Qatar. Surely not.
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah, they're at 50. I couldn't believe it. So, yeah, I was like, I have to abandon that one. Yeah, I thought that would have been... Yeah, I mean, look at... So, Greece 52. I mean, I would have thought Greece were Euro champions. I mean, going back a little while,
That was a
weren't
while
they?
ago. Yeah. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was a while ago.
Yeah.
But I mean, they've got some sort of world footballing pedigree.
Mm.
So I mean, were they the best team that year? Probably not. But they won the Euro. So I mean, just looking at that, Slovakia, Romania aren't awful. Um, there's I mean, Bosnia, they were in the World Cup last year.
Mm. Yep.
So Northern Ireland, there's plenty of teams there that, yeah, I don't like it. It's just strange.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you give it to a host nation, if the host nation is a nation that's made the World Cup already, rather than putting in a guaranteed nation of a nation that has never played in a World Cup before, you put in somebody who is almost a shoe in to qualify anyway. So it gives gives the likelihood of some of these other lesser nations, we'll say, to potentially get that free spot. Whereas if you give it to a nation that has, never qualified for a World Cup before, it makes qualifications all that more difficult.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting topic, and there's plenty of ways you can look at it. And I mean, once this is all said and done, has the next one been decided yet?
I think it would have been. It would have been. They tend to do it like 2 World Cups ahead, but I don't. I want to say it's in. No, I think it's shared between Mexico and the USA.
Nailed it. Yep,
Yeah.
and Canada.
And Canada, yeah.
So I mean, there's teams that have got some sort of history. I mean, big cities. I mean,
all 3 of those teams are in this World Cup.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, the United States as a sporting spectacle would be amazing. So, yeah, that's somewhere that's definitely where we need to be going towards.
No, good point, mate. Good discussions. Interested to hear anyone's thoughts on that below, because that's definitely interesting. I mean, there's a lot of people obviously weren't happy with the fact Qatar got given the World Cup as it was anyway. So yeah, definitely a good topic of discussion. But Tazza, that's going to wrap us up. Obviously, we'll be back here as well. World Cup, plenty of World Cup content planned on coming. But if you're new or are not subscribed, make sure you do so you can stay up to date with that content. Thanks for joining us for that first part of the Premier League season. Obviously, this type of video will return when the Premier League does. But for now, we look forward to the World Cup. Tazza, thanks for joining us, mate, and we'll catch you all later.